In a small town in Michigan, James Carter owned a struggling auto repair shop. On a cold Thanksgiving evening, when most people were celebrating with their families, James chose to help a stranded family with car trouble. He gave up his own holiday plans to fix their vehicle. This simple act of kindness led to an incredible turn of events that would change his life forever. Hi everyone, welcome to Mythos Weaver. Today, I'm excited to share a new story with you. James Carter wiped the sweat from his forehead as he looked at his small auto repair shop's accounts. The numbers weren't good. Bills kept piling up, and customers were becoming scarce in their small Michigan town. The cold November wind rattled the workshop windows as he sat alone in his office. His phone buzzed. It was his sister, Marie. "Are you still coming for Thanksgiving dinner tomorrow? The kids really want to see their Uncle James," she said. James smiled, thinking about his niece and nephew. "Of course, I'll be there at 5, he replied. The next day, James spent the morning working on a few cars. The holiday season was tough. Many people were leaving town to visit family, and his business was slower than ever. He could barely afford to pay his 2 employees their wages. At 4:30 p.m., James locked up the shop, put on his worn jacket, and headed to his truck. The temperature had dropped below freezing, and snow was starting to fall. His phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello, is this C's Auto Repair?" A worried woman's voice asked. "Our car broke down on Highway 23. We've been calling every shop in the area. Nobody is answering because of Thanksgiving. We have 2 small children with us." James looked at his watch. His sister was expecting him. The family would be disappointed, but something in the woman's voice made his decision clear. "Where exactly are you located?" "I'll be there to help," he said. "Thank you so much. We're near mile marker 45. The car just stopped working. We were driving to Chicago to visit my mother in the hospital," the woman explained, her voice shaking from the cold. James called his sister Marie. "I'm sorry, there's a family stranded on the highway. They have kids with them. I need to help them." Marie understood. That was just who her brother was, always putting others first. He drove through the growing snowstorm. After 20 minutes, he saw a black SUV on the side of the road. A man was standing outside, waving his flashlight. A woman sat in the car with 2 children, trying to keep them warm. The man introduced himself as David. "We're so grateful you came out on Thanksgiving. Every other place was closed. We didn't know what to do," David said, his relief obvious in his voice. James got to work immediately. The temperature was dropping fast, and he wanted to get this family back on their way as quickly as possible. Little did he know this Thanksgiving sacrifice would lead to something extraordinary. James opened the hood of the SUV and checked the engine. Despite the expensive car model, it had a serious fuel injection problem. The repair would take at least 3 hours. The snow was getting heavier, and the wind was picking up. "Your car needs major repairs. It's not safe to drive like this," James told David. "The nearest open shop is 2 hours away in Chicago. I can fix it here, but it will take some time." The 2 children in the back seat were wrapped in blankets, looking scared. The woman who introduced herself as Sarah spoke softly. "We need to reach Chicago tonight. My mother had a heart attack. The doctors say." Her voice cracked with emotion. David held her hand to comfort her. James thought for a moment. "My shop is 10 minutes away. I can tow your car there and fix it properly. It's warmer, and there's a small waiting area for your family." The couple agreed, grateful for his help. At the shop, James worked quickly under the bright lights. He noticed David making several phone calls, speaking quietly. Sarah helped the children with coloring books. She found something in her bag. They looked expensive like everything else they had. Hours passed, and James's hands were cold and sore, but he kept working. He saw how worried Sarah was about her mother. He thought about his own mom, whom he had lost 2 years ago. He understood their rush to reach Chicago. Around 9 p.m., the repair was finally done. James had replaced several parts. working as fast as he could. When David asked for the bill, James hesitated. The parts alone cost over $800. For a family rushing to see a sick mother on Thanksgiving, it felt wrong to charge full price. Just pay for the parts. No labor charge today, James said. David tried to argue, but James refused. Consider it a Thanksgiving gift. Just get your family to Chicago safely. Sarah had tears in her eyes as she hugged James. As they prepared to leave, David handed James his business card. Thank you. You gave up your holiday to help strangers. People like you are rare, David said. James put the card in his pocket without looking at it. He was just happy to help. The family drove away into the snowy night. James closed his shop, exhausted but satisfied. He never expected that this business card would soon change everything. The real surprise was still to come. The next morning, James arrived at his shop early. He found the business card David had given him and finally read it. His eyes widened. David Thompson, CEO of Thompson Automotive Industries, the largest car parts manufacturer in the Midwest. James could hardly believe it. He had helped the CEO of a billion-dollar company, but he didn't regret charging only for parts. He had done what felt right, regardless of who they were. A week passed. James focused on his work, struggling to keep his shop running. He had to let one of his employees go. The bills were becoming too much to handle. The bank was threatening to foreclose on his shop. One cold December morning, a black limousine pulled up outside. David Thompson stepped out, wearing a suit that probably cost more than James's monthly income. "Good morning, James. Do you have a moment to talk?" David asked. Inside the office, David got straight to the point. "After you helped us, we made it to Chicago in time. Sarah's mother is recovering well, but that's not why I'm here. Your kindness that night impressed me deeply." David continued, "I did some research on your shop. You're known for honest work and fair prices. People trust you. That's exactly what I need." James listened, confused about where this was going. "I'm expanding Thompson Automotive. We're opening authorized service centers across the country. I want your shop to be our first flagship location," David explained. "We'll provide full funding for renovation, new equipment, and staff training." James sat in silence, trying to process what he was hearing. "But my shop is small. I can barely keep it running," he said honestly. David smiled. "That's exactly why I'm here. You proved your character on Thanksgiving. Money can't buy integrity like yours. We'll keep your name on the shop. You'll remain the owner, but with our full backing. No more financial struggles. What do you say?" David held out a contract. The terms were incredible: full autonomy, guaranteed supply of parts, and a partnership that would solve all his money problems. James thought about all the times he had helped people, just like he had helped David's family. How many times he had reduced prices for those in need. Now that same kindness was coming back in ways he never imagined. James signed the contract with shaking hands. Within weeks, his small shop transformed. New equipment arrived daily. The worn-out sign was replaced with a sleek new one. Carter's Auto Care, a Thompson Automotive partner. His old employee returned, along with 5 new skilled mechanics. James kept his policy of fair pricing and honest work. The shop's reputation grew quickly. People came from neighboring towns, trusting the Carter name. Sarah Thompson visited one day with her children. "My mother asks about you often," she told James. She said, "You're the reason she got to see her grandchildren that Thanksgiving." The kids gave James a drawing they made of him fixing cars. David's support went beyond business. He invited James to industry events, introducing him to important people. "This is the man who showed me what true service means," David would say. James stayed humble, treating every customer the same way. One morning, a familiar face walked in. It was Marie, James's sister. She looked around the transformed shop with tears in her eyes. "Mom and Dad would be so proud," she said softly. "Remember how Dad always said kindness comes back to you?" The shop's success allowed James to start a program helping low-income families with car repairs. He remembered his own struggles and wanted to help others. David fully supported this initiative, matching every dollar James put into it. Local news channels ran stories about the shop, calling it the Thanksgiving miracle. But James knew it wasn't just about that one night. It was about every time he had chosen to be kind, every customer he had helped despite his own problems. During the next Thanksgiving, James hosted a dinner at his shop for employees and their families. David and Sarah Thompson joined them. As James looked around at all the smiling faces, he realized how much his life had changed in 1 year. "You know what makes this special?" David said during dinner. "You're still the same person who helped us that night. Success hasn't changed your heart." James nodded, understanding that his greatest wealth wasn't in his bank account, but in the lives he touched. 3 years after that snowy Thanksgiving night, Carter's Auto Care became a model for all Thompson Automotive Service Centers. James now oversees 10 locations across Michigan, each following his principles of honest service and kindness. Every Thanksgiving, James keeps his original shop open for emergencies. His team volunteers to help stranded travelers, never charging labor costs that day. "It's our way of keeping the spirit of that night alive," James tells new employees. Sarah's mother recovered fully and often visits the shop. She brings cookies and tells everyone how James's kindness gave her extra years with her grandchildren. The drawing those kids made still hangs in James's office, reminding him where it all started. The bank that once threatened to foreclose now features James in their small business success stories. But he makes sure they include how David Thompson took a chance on someone just because of an act of kindness. James created a foundation helping young people learn auto repair. "Everyone deserves a chance," he says. David matches every donation, turning the foundation into a $1 million program. Many students get jobs at Thompson Automotive after graduating. Marie's children now work at the shop during summer breaks. "Uncle James taught us that being kind is the best business plan," his nephew tells customers. James smiles every time he hears this, knowing his parents would have loved seeing their grandchildren learn this lesson. Last week, another stranded family came to the shop. James worked on their car himself, just like old times. The father asked why such a successful business owner still worked on cars. James smiled and told him the Thanksgiving story. "Sometimes the smallest choices have the biggest impact," James said. "I could have driven past that family in the snow. Instead, I stopped. That choice changed everything." The man nodded, understanding the deeper message. Today, James's shop is more than a business. It's a symbol of how kindness can transform lives. Every car that leaves his shop carries this story, spreading hope that good things happen to good people. Love this story? Tap that like button and subscribe to Mythos Weaver for more. Let us know how this story made you feel with a single word in the comments.